Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dogman Sasquatch Oklahoma Encounters. My name is Lance Hightower, one of the Cryptid brothers, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have sunny skies and it's cold, but we have no snow, so I hope you guys are doing well in your neck of the woods, wherever you may be. It's been a very quick-paced and busy last few months here, but it's always good to get behind the mic here and get a show out to you guys, and there's so much that's happened since then. But a couple things we'll start out here, and then I want to follow up here I want to say briefly, but it's not going to be brief here, with a intro to part 3, but not part 3 to the Ohio Bigfoot attack. Before we get going though, I had a note here from someone if I would mention about the International Bigfoot Conference in Ogden, Utah. It's happening February 2nd through the 4th, 2018 at the beautiful Egyptian Theater. You can, for more information, you can go to www.internationalbigfootconference.com to find out more. Right now, I want to recognize the subbers. After the last 3 episodes, we've had a huge increase in subbers, and we truly, sincerely appreciate that. For without you, we would not have a show. We want to thank Wes from Sasquatch Chronicles for picking up the episode 24, the Ohio Bigfoot attack. We appreciate that. We weren't expecting that, but we appreciate it. He shared it on his blog, and we picked up a lot of new subscribers. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And this is our small appreciation and token to say thank you. Again, for without you, we would not have a show. So we'll move here quickly and recognize the channels. We have Always Return, Neural Girl, Eddie Rods, Betty Matt Cowell, Walter Whitley 31, Brian Carr, Isaac Walsink, Zyman Hamzon, Alan Mercier, Murray Evans, Dodge 27, Salvador Herrera, Teyu Alpha Mu, Old Gold 1975, E. Torres, John Moss, Bobby Drake, Spencer Atkins, Christina Grass, Kristen Dorak, Jenny Kennis, Sam Sneed, Cindy Zen 82, Lumbee Jerk, David L., Dan Nemakel, Monica Tanaka, Jason O., Augustin Valerial, Bill Loelka, Sunny Angel 55, and DV Opsec. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you for tuning in, and we appreciate you for commenting. We receive so many, hundreds and hundreds of comments. I would like to be able to, if you're asking me a question on one of the comments, I would like to say that I can get to all of them. I don't all the time, just because the time schedule that I keep. I'm a full-time practitioner here in Tulsa, as well as having a family, and then we do this show after hours and early in the morning, so and on weekends. So I appreciate it. I will try to get to some of the comments as I peruse through there. So in addition to that, if you call our toll-free number, give me just a little bit of time to return the call back. It may not be immediate. I will do my best. I receive those on my email. That number rings in, and I will do my best. We received such a large volume of calls after the Ohio Bigfoot attack episodes that it was difficult for me to get to it. We have our assistant, Sarah. She helps out tremendously. So if you've called and left a message wanting us to contact you, hang in there. We will, I promise. So let's move on here to talk. I want to say briefly, but it's not going to be brief, but I'll hurry up here before we get to this episode. So I wanted to do a part 3, as I indicated, on part 2 of the Ohio Bigfoot attack, and I wanted to do one because a lot of you had questions, as well as myself. A couple things to follow up. We tried to attain the medical records of, and for this story's sake here, let's call Cousin 1 the gentleman that I interviewed that you heard on episode 24, and Cousin 2 is the cousin I have yet to speak with, and that's what this story is going to revolve around still at this point in time. I speak to Cousin 1 on a regular basis. It was a few times a week, and now it's like bi-weekly, and for good reason, and I'll explain. He's a bit nervous and anxious at this point because of what's been happening to his cousin number 2. So I'll back up a little bit and say on November 24th of this year, after those episodes, I received a very, very interesting message left on the toll-free number, and I will play it for you. At first, I've probably listened to it at least 70 times or so. And when I first listened to it, I thought, this is a hoax. It's a synthesized voice, and someone's just kind of playing with me. And we don't receive too many of those, but you can kind of tell. You don't have to, you can just tell if someone's a hoax. They would get very detailed in the message left, and we don't get a lot of them, we get a few. Well, this one here, after listening to it numerous times, I believe it's authentic. I think it's the real deal. And actually it coincides, after letting Cousin 1 listen to it, it coincides with a gentleman that he remembers seeing and briefly visiting just prior to him and Cousin 2 going out and fishing and having the unfortunate incident that happened. So I'll let you listen to it right now, and then it's a little, the voice is kind of hard to understand. I verified the number that this came from, and it does not give the township. Usually I can see the township that the number comes from when you call in, but this one was blocked. But I checked the area code, and it coincided with the Ohio area that this attack occurred. So that checked out. So the voice is kind of grovelly. It's kind of, it's really hard to discern and understand, and especially at the very end, but I'll explain what I think he said and some of the reasoning why.
They call me Mr. X. On August 17th, 2017, there was 2 cousins fishing, and one got attacked. That's a true statement. There's me and 4 of the guys there. We saw the incident, but the feds are involved. The military's involved. Fair warning, I would give credibility for the bravery of both of them.
So I apologize for the kind of the grovelness, if you will, of the recording. That's how I received it. I tried to clean it up a little bit. But basically, the gentleman was saying that, in a nutshell, him and 4 others were eyewitness to what happened to the 2 cousins, and that the military and the feds are in fact involved, that give fair warning to the credibility, and I believe he says avoidery, to both of them meaning the feds and the military. And obviously avoidery meaning avoidance. So basically he's saying, we saw it, and there's 2 entities involved, the military, the feds, and I would give full credibility that if they want to protect this matter, this incident, they'll do so. So be careful how deep you go into the rabbit hole, because it goes deep and wide. Now, what I did do is that I took a chance, and I thought maybe this is a cell phone, a smartphone that this gentleman's called from. He may not answer me, but he might respond to a text. So what I did is I text the number, and I just went with it. I said, Mr. X, received your information. I appreciate it. Can you call back, toll-free number, on a different number so we can talk? About an hour or 2 later, I received a text that said, sorry, no can do in calling back. Feds spoke to me. I cannot discuss this matter. I apologize. And that's all that was said. So he was spoken to, it sounds like, and therefore he won't talk to me, at least at this present time. He might be listening to this episode, so maybe down the road, who knows. What's interesting about the recording is there's some questions that I have. Is that he calls himself Mr. X. He doesn't want to obviously give his name. He doesn't say anything in the message about Bigfoot. He just calls it, he was witness to the attack. He doesn't say what kind of attack. He doesn't give location. He doesn't give what state. The date that he gives that the attack occurred is incorrect. That's what I'm in question of. He said August 17th of this year. Actually, the attack occurred October 6th of this year. So I think I'm not trying to read anything into it, any underlying code or message, if you will. I just think he got the dates wrong. It just came out wrong. That's what I think. Now, when I let Cousin One listen to this message, he did recall that there was an older gentleman with a group of people that he met at the boat ramp prior to him and Cousin Two going out and fishing. And that there was a group of people. And that they were in a boat, but they could have been on the shoreline. Not of the island they were fishing, but on around the shore of this lake area. And that it's very possible they could have been a witness. This gentleman was an older gentleman, and Cousin One said he had something on the throat, like a tracheal tube or something, that he talked kind of hoarse or raspy. And I said, in my mind, that sounds like a tracheotomy device, and which would lend a little bit of credence to the sound that this gentleman, when he's speaking, how it's very low and grovelly in the message. That's why I thought it was synthesized, when after listening to it very discerningly, I think it is his voice. I really do. And being that Cousin One said this gentleman was older, that kind of fit with all those at the same time. I felt that if this was a hoax message, there would be more details in there. It would have referred specifically to the Ohio Bigfoot attack, specifically at the location. And there would be, but being that it was very vague, intentionally I felt, and he was vague on who he was, and I heard in that a level of seriousness, of matter-of-factness, if you will. That's why I'm going with this as being authentic and a real message that was left. I felt this way. The other brothers that acknowledged this felt this way, as well as Cousin One. So he thought it was interesting, and Cousin One felt that it was this gentleman, and that had he seen this, he would have been found and spoken to. I'm sure they kind of quarantined the area quickly. I'm sure they did. So I thought that was interesting. In addition to that, what has been very interesting and made Cousin One a bit nervous and anxious in talking with me as much as what we had been, we're still talking, but not as often, is that Cousin Two has decided, or at a few weeks back, to go to another level of trying to blow the lid off this, if you will, and went to the local newspaper and radio station. And him and another person went, that he kind of spilled the beans on this. So him and his friend did this, and I think they got a story out briefly in the local talk radio. I'm not sure if they got anything in the newspaper or not. Couldn't find anything. And it was very difficult and challenging to try and get any medical records. It's just virtually impossible on this, especially with HIPAA laws on the privacy, let alone trying to get anything from Cousin Two at this point. But what happened is that shortly after this friend and then Cousin Two went to the radio newspaper, a couple days later, Cousin Two was arrested at his home in handcuffs and sent to jail for accusations that he didn't do. And I say that not because I know him, it's because Cousin One knows him very, very well, and he knows him, and he knows his habits, his characteristics, his life. They grew up together. And he knew that it was false, but he didn't know what to do. And they set the bail at thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So Cousin Two hired an attorney. The court hearing date was in federal court. Cousin One drove Cousin Two to the courthouse, and they were waiting on Cousin Two's attorney that he had hired. Moments before, within an hour before the hearing, before the judge, the attorney of Cousin Two calls and says he can't do the case. He won't do the case. He can't do the case. And that's all that was said, leaving Cousin Two a little bewildered. So he's in wonderment what's going to happen. Like, great, I'm getting ready to go into court here with no attorney. And there was quite a few people out in the hall with their attorney, mingling around, waiting for their turn to go before the judge with their particular case. So there's quite a few people. I don't know, 30, 35, I think cousin one said. And of all the people, what's very strange is this gentleman was walking down the hall. He saw him, and he didn't stop anyone else. He went right up to cousin two, and cousin two did know this gentleman, and this gentleman went right up to cousin two and said, "Are you so-and-so? My name is such and such, and I'm a court-appointed attorney for you." Well, cousin one thought that was very strange. Number one, they've never met. How did he pick him out of the crowd that quick? And how did he know that he lost his attorney that quick? You know, there was a lot of questions there. They didn't have time to question it. This gentleman that said he was a court-appointed attorney went to cousin two and he said, "Can we discuss this matter in private somewhere?" So they went down the hall into a room, leaving cousin one out there just waiting outside the courtroom. After a moment or two passed, they exited out of the room. The gentleman walked down the hall. Cousin two came to cousin one and said, "Let's go. We're going home." Cousin one said, "Well, I thought we were going to go in for your hearing." And he said, "Nope, that gentleman's going to take care of it. We've got it all solved. Everything's going to be fine. I just have to do some things." So it was still a little gray for cousin one what cousin two was referring to. They got in the car. Cousin one dropped cousin two off. Not much was said on the way. Not much was said when he departed the car and went to the house. And not much is really said to this point. So when cousin one called me, I let him listen to the message that occurred, that was left November 24th. He explained to me what had happened to cousin two and all the things that were going on, and so we basically surmised that that gentleman probably was not an attorney. He represented other federal government entities that basically said, "Look, if you shut your mouth and stop this, we'll drop the charges. If you decide to proceed, we're going to make them stick, and you're going to be in jail a very, very, very long time. It's up to you." So I think at this point, cousin two has come to light that he's got to be quiet. He can't talk to anyone, and therefore he won't discuss anything with cousin one at all. So this makes obviously cousin one a bit nervous and anxious. So we have agreed to stop our conversations a little bit more from not occurring as frequent. We do communicate. We do have a very good working relationship in discussion, and so he's just nervous about doing anything at this point in time, discussing the matter in depthly, although it is very, very, very puzzling and questioning and on so many different levels. It's just bizarre that when him and I talk that we're even discussing this is something out of a sci-fi movie. We mention that and we say that quite often, but it is occurring. It did occur and continues to kind of plague his cousin and bewilder cousin one. Cousin one doesn't notice anybody following him at present, but he is not without some reservation that there's someone that could be hanging around the town, kind of poking just from a distance, watching him going to work, or possibly bugging the lines. We don't know. He doesn't know. At this point in time, it's just a matter of just keep it quiet. So that's where it's at present. That's kind of where it's left off. And as I said, I would like to do a part 3 somewhere down the road. I just don't know when. So we're going to table it at this point in time. The gentleman is not as frightened as he used to be. He's definitely calmed way down. His cousin, it seems though, he has 2, but now his cousin is where he was in a scared, he was in a anger mode and a vocalization mode. Now he's in a quiet mode, and I'm sure for good reason, but he won't discuss that. So I just wanted to update you guys. I know this is a lengthy intro, but I felt that it needed to, since I don't have enough material really to make a part 3 yet in getting on cousin 1. let alone cousin 2. I wanted just to update you here on this episode. So anyway, let's move on to the episode that we have. I think you'll find it very interesting. This gentleman called in just shortly after that the episode 24 aired, and he has family in Oklahoma and in Montana. And I thought it was interesting some of the recommendations that his father gave when you see a Bigfoot, what you should do. I found that very interesting from a personal standpoint, but from a cultural standpoint and a parental standpoint. So I think you'll find the story interesting, the encounter interesting, and again, the recommendations that the father gave to him if he ever encounters a Bigfoot. So let's go there now and listen up what this gentleman had to say. You live in Anadarko, and you were up in Montana. Okay, and
I'm from Montana, and I met my birth family in '92. I moved up there, and I just moved back in 2016. I'm 59 years old right now, and I lived in Montana from '92 to 2016. But this happened on 1991 during the Sundance out there in the mountains of the southern end of Fort Belknap Indian Reservation. And right west of us is another mountain range called the Little Bear Paws, and that's the Rocky Boy Indian Reservation. And down south of us is the Missouri River and what they call the Missouri Breaks. I mean, that is some rugged country. I mean, it is really hard to hunt down there because of the coulees are so deep and steep. There's no way that you can ride a horse down there. So,
I've heard that about that area.
Yeah, it's rough. It's really rough down there. But I live in, when I was living up there on Fort Belknap, it was pretty rugged country. I mean, there's a lot of deep coulees out there on the plains outside of the mountains, and it reminds me of the area around Amarillo.
Oh,
right before you get to Amarillo, around Johnson's Ranch Road.
Okay.
And one night we had to go in from the Sundance, go into town, which was about 50 miles away, and get some like paper plates and spoons and knives and stuff like that, and bring back to camp. Just bring back some supplies. And I had my brother and myself and my niece. My niece was in the back seat of the car. And as we were coming back, we wasn't speeding. We was just trying to take our time to get back. We didn't want to speed because of the law. And as we were coming up to 3, on top of the hill, just south of the 3 Buttes. But, I never thought I'd see a Bigfoot out there in the plains like that, This would be the last place where I would see him.
So,
but he was there.
So, repeat back before it kind of got staticky again. You guys, it was you, your brother, your niece, and you were going into town to get some plates, spoons, and forks for the Sundance. And
I get some supplies for the Sundance. We got our supplies and we were heading back. And as we was coming up to 3 Buttes on top of the hill, as you drop into 3 Buttes, there's a sign on the side of the road that says Little Rocky Mountains. And as we were coming up to that sign, there was that Bigfoot walking across the road. He took 3 steps to get across that highway.
Wow.
And he took one step to get over the bar pit. And when he went by that sign, he was black, all black. And when he got to that sign, I mean, we couldn't believe it, how tall he was, because he was big as he was tall as that sign was. And that sign is probably at least 10 foot tall.
Wow.
And we slowed down and we watched him. And when he went across the fence line that was on the side of the highway, he just stepped over it and he never missed a beat. He just kept on walking, and he started walking faster because of us. And when we seen him, me and my brother, we know all about Bigfoot. My dad told us about him. And so we didn't freak out. But my niece that was in the back seat, she freaked out. She started crying. She started clawing her way, trying to get up into the front seat of the car with us.
Oh.
Because she was so afraid. And we kept trying to talk to her and calm her down, calm her down, calm her down. Because we believed that Bigfoot was going up to the Sundance to watch us up in the mountains. Because we had our Sundance in the Little Rocky Mountains, up in the mountains, up on top, near the top of the mountains. And that's where we have our Sundance grounds and our powwow grounds. And this happened in 1991. And, me and my brother, we couldn't believe that, we seen a Bigfoot out there, because what we thought that he must have came out of the Missouri Breaks and came through the Little Rocky Mountains, and went over to the Bear Paw Mountains over on Rocky Boy, and now he was going back down to the Missouri Breaks through the Little Rockies, because there was another, what do you call it? Dang, I got some little bit of brain damage.
No, that's okay.
From a car wreck. But
I'm sorry to hear.
On Highway 191 down there, DY Junction, where Highway 66 meets Highway 191 from Malta all the way down through Montana. And a car hit a elk. And so when the wrecker went out there and started putting the car on the wrecker, he heard noise back there where the elk was hit. And when he looked back, he seen a Bigfoot, and he picked that thing up and walked off into the Missouri Breaks with that elk, carrying it. And that's on the Bigfoot stories that I've found. And that's the reason why I know that, we have Bigfoots around the Little Rocky Mountains. Because we're just probably 10, 15 miles from the Missouri Breaks to the mountains. And I lived in Hayes, which is in the other side of the mountains, down in the valley. And there's mountains to the west and to the south of us. But that's when I seen that Bigfoot out there. Then the other time I seen a Bigfoot that I thought, which I couldn't see because I didn't have binoculars, was up there on about milepost 7 on US 93 north of Missoula, Montana, where I lived. I lived about 8 miles north on Highway US 93, and that's that's a big mountain valley, and there's a rattlesnake range to the west of us, and to the east of us is the mountains. I forgot the name of them, but we got the 9 Mile wolf pack out there. But over there on the side of the tree line in that valley where we lived, I seen something tall, really tall, standing by a big old tree, just standing there swaying. And there was a house maybe 200 yards away. And only thing I could attribute to that it was a Bigfoot just standing there. And this one was red. But I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of Bigfoots at all. I go camping, and I went way back in the mountains in Montana. Went camping up in there.
Mm-hmm.
And one night we had the horses. We circled. We put a rope in a circle all the way around our camp, and we tied up our horses in a circle. And the horses are really good watchdogs. Well, during the night, they started really raising Cain. And in the firelight, I looked up, and I seen about 9 feet up, yellow eyes looking in on us. Big, big yellow eyes. And I thought it was probably just a bear. So I didn't think nothing of it. But it could have been a Bigfoot because it was so tall. But that morning, there was a bear that came to camp, and we shot at it. And we went down through the brush, through the willows, and on the side of the mountain lake, there was about 40 bears. So that's what I thought it was. It was a bear, but it could have been a Bigfoot. But that's my experience up in Montana. Now, down here in Anadarko, you probably heard of Randy, what's his last name? Yepa?
Say that again?
Randy Yepa?
Yes, I have.
Well, I live here in the same town that he lived.
Okay, I know. I've been through Anadarko many, many times.
Yeah. Well, I went out to, about 6 miles west of Anadarko, me and my son one time, and I wanted to walk on the river. And between Anadarko and Fort Cobb, between Washita and Fort Cobb, there's that one road. But south of that road, there's nothing. And so I went about 2 miles back in there, and there's some farmers' fields out there that they farm, and it's about a half a mile across, and there's a tree line. And I seen something black standing next to a tree. And I looked, and I had my binoculars, and I looked, and I seen that it was a Bigfoot. And I gave the binoculars to my son, and he looked at it. And he said, "Dad, what are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, it kind of looks like a big male. We better get out of here because we might be in his territory." So we walked out, and I noticed that every time we walked, he walked. And when we stopped, he stopped. And that was half a mile away. And he did that until we finally got out of there. But we got out of there, and I seen that Bigfoot down there, and I was about 3.5 miles into that back country. through that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I was along the Washita River.
Washita River, yeah.
Yeah. I was right on the river.
What time of year, back with the first encounter that you had with your brother and niece?
Okay, that was in June.
It was in June, okay. And that Sundance, that festival, is that an annual festival that they have there in Montana?
Yes, we have the Sundance about once a year, but sometimes we change it to Lodgepole, the next little town over.
Okay.
On the reservation.
So the encounter happened in not so much a rocky area, like you said, but it was very similar in its topography, like Amarillo, out there where you've got the rolling hills.
Yeah, out there in the plains.
Yeah.
You know, we had deep coulees.
Now, when you say the coulees, could you explain to the audience kind of what a coulee is?
A coulee is the deep valley out on the plains.
Okay. So it would be like western Oklahoma out in the panhandle, as well as out in the panhandle of Texas.
Yeah, but more coulees.
Yeah. Out there, you got some deep, deep ravines.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to be walking out there at night, that's for sure.
That's for sure, because there's coyotes and wolves out there.
How old was your niece when she saw this, and what time of day was this?
This was about 10 o'clock at night when we was coming back, and my niece was probably around 20 or 21 years old.
Oh, I feel bad for her seeing that for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm sure she...
That was the first time for all of us.
But like you said, you had grew up being spoken to by your dad.
Right. He told us what to do if we ever ran into one.
Do you mind sharing what he said to do?
Yes. He told us if you ever see a Bigfoot when you're camping and he comes in, talk into him and invite him in and offer him coffee, because they like coffee and they like a lot of sugar in it.
So the coffee that's already, you're not talking the grounds, but you're talking a brewed coffee.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yep. You just invite him in and you don't be afraid of him, because he's your brother.
Do you mind sharing, Kevin, what background of Native you are?
I'm full-blood Native. I'm half Canadian Cree, and I'm half Grove on the American side from Fort Belknap, Montana. And the northern boundary of the reservation is only 20 miles from Canada.
Amazing. So with that instruction that your father gave you,
yes,
what is the belief? And I have an idea, but would you mind sharing what the belief of your relatives as well as friends in the reservation, what are their feelings about the Bigfoot?
The Bigfoot is like the brother and the keeper of the mountains, keepers of nature.
Have you heard of any other encounters by friends, family, or other encounters that your father had shared with you guys?
No. None of my other brothers or sisters ever ran into one.
Out of curiosity, here in Oklahoma, I have some friends that are Native, and because we're friends, they share with me openly. But they have told me upon occasion, when we first started talking about this subject, that it is a subject they don't really bring up a lot to other people. Because their elders had explained.
Yeah, I'm kind of different. I'll let you have it.
And we appreciate that. But that's what I was going to get at. Is there that same mentality among the people on the reservation or in certain circles?
It's all the same. Just like I believe, that's where I got it. And like I'm I was raised Kiowa, but really I'm Grove on Cree from Montana. But I know the Kiowa language down here because I was adopted as a young child. And just like what Randy said, the Bigfoot, they're called Kotsapo.
Say that again?
Kotsapo.
Kotsapo.
Yeah. Means Bigfoot.
Kotsapo. Did your father, now when he said again, if you have an encounter with these Bigfoot, you speak your native tongue?
Native language to them.
That they would understand?
They would understand.
Wow. That's interesting. Very interesting. And then offer it coffee with sugar.
Right. That was up in Montana. Down here, all they told me was talk Indian to them. And that way, they know that you're not afraid of them. And they'll understand. And they'll know that you're not in there to harm them.
On the second eyewitness encounter, when you saw the red one,
yeah.
What year was that again? You may have said. I was just taking some notes here. And what time of year was it? And were you in a car? Were you walking around?
No, I was just living right across the road from them.
Oh, okay.
And I noticed one thing. I had 2 basset hounds, and they would chase mountain lions. They would chase bears. They wasn't afraid of the bears or the mountain lions or, any of the wildlife. But sometimes they would get so scared, they'd be shaking, and they'd be going underneath the couch. They'd be jumping in the bed and getting underneath the blankets. And I always wondered why they did that. And my guess was, after I found out that, dogs are really afraid of them, that I thought that Bigfoot was around. Because up there we get deep, deep snow during the wintertime up in where I lived in Montana and when I had my basset hounds. So when the dogs did that, I knew that Bigfoot was around.
Well, I've heard that on more than one occasion where people will have great hunting dogs, whether they be coon dogs or dogs that run hogs, and when these dogs have a run-in with these Bigfoot, it really, the dogs back away or they stop the trail, or they're just a ruined dog. They don't want to get out anymore.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they're sensing anything other than the smell, if it's infrasound or anything like that, being that they can hear at a higher frequency. I'm not sure. It may be a combination. No one knows, but I have heard that upon more than one occasion about dogs.
That's what was really weird, because my dogs would just be totally afraid inside the house, and that wasn't like them at all. And I never could figure it out.
That just
until I heard that, that what you just said about other hunting dogs.
Yeah, we've heard that quite a few times, as well as hearing it on other episodes of people telling these coon hunters down in Arkansas and Missouri, and where they run into these things, their dogs, and then some of their dogs don't want to hunt again. They're ruined. And
well, I know one thing. I'm not afraid of Bigfoots. Bigfoots, they're my brothers, and I know how to handle them to where they won't hurt me. All I got to do is speak my native language, and they understand. Because when I grew up, my aunties, when we'd go visit them, and at night, us kids would be playing outside, And my aunties would always come out and tell us, you guys stay in the light, because if you get outside of the light and get into the dark, those Kotzapos are going to get you. And they got a basket on their back, and they'll throw you in there, and they'll take you and they'll eat you. So you guys stay in the light. And I always thought that was just a myth, and that, that was a way to keep us kids close to the house, so when we had to go in, we were being right there. But as I grew up and as I was researching Bigfoot after I seen that one, then it became real. The natives knew about the Bigfoots long before the white man.
I do believe that 100%.
Yep. That's what we were told.
Wow, if I had an aunt tell me that, I think I would have just been a hermit at the house. I would have never left. So
you don't have to be afraid of them.
So what does your brother think now when he saw that one, when you and your niece, when you all had that? What does he think now? Do you guys talk about it often?
No, we don't talk about it at all. We just leave it alone, and it was just part of life. And so we just don't talk about it. Because if we did talk about it, what can we do about it?
Right. Well, some people like to go back and retell, and just over and over of an encounter, because most people, when they have an encounter like that, it's something so out of the norm, beyond their scope of believing or thinking, that it's such an emotional tie, an emotional a moment that it just stays imprinted on their mind, their brain, and it's hard to remove that moment. So they talk about it often, especially with the people that were with them when the encounter happened. So I was just curious if he spoke about it often or you talk about it often. But
me and my brother, we never talked about it, but I don't know about my niece. She was the one that was really freaked out and screaming and crying and clawing her way up to the front seat.
Did that Bigfoot ever look at you guys as it was crossing the road?
No, he never did.
How close was it?
Okay, when we first came up on it, we were probably 1 lane and a half a lane from him.
Oh my, that's
the
close.
Northbound lane and maybe a half another lane, because he was just going by that sign. And when we seen him, we slowed down. And that's when my niece started freaking out.
So you could see it clearly that close?
Yes. He looked like an ape.
Could you tell any features that, besides its color, its hands, was it, how low did they hang, or how was it a smooth gait?
Okay, the first thing that we noticed was that his deadgum arms his hands were down below his knees, or right below his knees. And that's too long. Plus, on top of that, he was so tall.
So you estimate, what do you think that his height was based on that sign that it crossed?
Yes, because he was as tall as that sign was.
What do you how tall do you think it may have been?
Probably about 9 or 10 feet.
Wow. Was it a thin Bigfoot, or is it fairly bulky and real thick?
He was kind of bulky. He was pretty wide in the stomach and the chest area. He was really wide.
So when it crossed that fence and then you said it really hooked up, Did you guys stop to see it in the periphery, or did you turn the car so you could put the lights on it to see it better?
No, we just slowed down, and what light could go over that way, we could do that because we was on the side of the hill, and we didn't want to get hit by another car. But they're out there. They're out there.
Oh, yes. Especially down where you're at now in that Anadarko area. That is a very, as we've been told, heavily populated with a lot of boogers down there. And
I've been out on the Riverside property where that one guy got beat up and they didn't find him for 2 days and all the bones were broken in his body. And I was over there where that kid was all beat up and they found him in the river. And I'm not going to say the school, Indian school out there.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
Yeah, out there where we go fishing in those ponds back behind the school, it is really thick. Man, I tell you what, those scrub oaks, they are so close together you can't get through them.
Yeah, when those scrub oaks get thick like that, I don't even think you can get through with a machete. It's just,
you can't.
You can't. It's impossible unless you crawl on your stomach. It's just
right.
You just got to go around or find a way.
Or else bring a chainsaw and cut your way through.
That's exactly right. So
it is really thick back there, and we were fishing back there. We kept fishing back there. Then one time, my nephew, he heard something, and he said, "Well, let's go, pack up, let's go. It's time to go." And he said that something about his kids got to get to bed or something like that, but I know he heard something, and that's why we had to leave. But I guarantee you what, it is really thick out there. It is so thick.
Yeah,
with scrub oaks.
I've deer hunted out there at Gracemont, outside of Gracemont.
Uh-huh.
And when you get out there walking around among those cedars, those big cedars, and scrub oaks, and those tamarack thickets, I mean, it's and come 5 o'clock, it's dark 30. You cannot see it at all. So I know what you're talking about. And some of that can be dangerous if you don't know that topography well out there, because you have you have some deep
if you don't know, you're in big trouble.
Yes, you definitely could fall off a cliff out there in a ravine and knock yourself out, break a leg, and so that's why it's always smart to go with a buddy.
Right, and some of those ravines are about 100 feet deep.
Oh, you've got that right, because I know there's some caves out there as well, here and there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you just tell people, if you're hunting on someone's property and they give you permission, ask the person that owns the property, are there any danger areas I should stay away from or that I need to stay away from? Is there any known caves or deep holes or old well systems? And sometimes they'll tell you exactly where it's at.
Yeah.
So,
well, I had a 30-06, but I'm going to a bigger gun, a lot bigger, when I go out.
Well, yeah, when you, it's all about shot placement, so you got to know your firearm very well. That's what Wiley Dave and myself and my brothers talk about. A lot of people, I carry a big pistol. That's just my preference.
What caliber pistol do you got?
I have a 500 Smith & Wesson.
Okay, because I was going to get me a 40 caliber.
Well, I would say
I had a 40 cal.
I would say if you're going to get a pistol for a sidearm, 40 caliber's fine. A lot of police officers, that's what they carried, and some of them still do.
Yeah.
But as far as an all-around good pistol for big game, and as a backup for protection. If it depends. If you're using it for out in the woods, I would say probably all around would be like a 44, 44 Magnum or 357. That'd be just fine.
Yeah.
But as far as personal protection, if you're in town,
I'm not talking about Bigfoot. I'm talking about those daggum dogmen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I would say if you're carrying it for that, a couple things to note is that I would at least go with a minimum of a 357 or a 44 and make sure you carry, again, so the next thing is your ammo. You want to make sure and carry. Now, when you practice, of course, you want to practice with smaller target loads. But the only way you can get really good at a pistol is practice, practice, practice. And then, because when people have an emotional, when they're, you've heard stories as well as I have, you see officers that are in a shootout with the bad guys and 40 to 50 rounds are exchanged and only one person got hit. So how can that be?
Right.
It's because when we're in a high emotional state, our marksmanship drastically goes down. So
yes, goes way off, like 50 to 60% way off. So this is why I tell people, if you haven't shot at least at a minimum of 1,000 or more rounds in your firearm, you really need to practice consistently. Know the firearm, different ammo loads, because if you buy federal ammo, it's going to shoot different than, say, Remington ammo. And so you need to get familiar with the ammo, or if you're a reloader and you prefer to do that. But do you know, speaking of Dogman, do you know of anyone that had any encounters out where you live right now? No, I don't. Not yet.
Well, unfortunately, they like to be just as the same type of terrain and topography as the Bigfoot. And so they can be out on the Great Plains at night, but also during the day. I think there's been typically more encounters during the day than at nighttime with people seeing these things. And they're very, very large, can be just as large as a Bigfoot. And their personalities or their character is a little more on the aggressive side than a Bigfoot.
That's what I've heard, because I listen to you guys every day. I mean, I spend $180-something a month on data for my straight talk phone just to listen to you guys.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, these Dogmen, that's one of our...
I'm not messing with them. As soon as I see them, I'm going to hit them.
Yes.
I'm going to shoot them.
I don't know...
I'm not going to mess with them.
Yeah, I don't know anyone that's able to truly communicate with these things. We know so very, very little about them. We don't know their habits. We know that they like the way they're designed. Typically predators, which we're saying that's what they are. They're a very highly evolved apex predator. They are designed for meat eating, not so much an agrarian diet where they eat a lot of plant-based. I'm not saying they can't eat plants or berries, but the way they're designed, their structure dictates their function, which that means they're a meat eater. And I don't want to be part of their smorgasbord.
No, I don't either.
But
because I usually carry a rifle, and I'll be carrying a pistol with me.
Well, that we're aware of, Kevin, I mean, these Dogmen also are very aware of what firearms are, just like Bigfoot. So having a firearm on your, you know how the Alaskan holsters are designed, like on your chest area, stomach? That's how I carry, because it's out of the way. It doesn't get caught on brush or any tamaracks, and these things are aware what they look like. So at least if you have something that's visible, I
was going to get one of those, what do you call it, holsters that goes inside your jacket.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking. That would be perfect as well.
Yeah. I was going to put it inside there and cover it.
Well, if you just remember, your ammo's got to have a lot of energy going behind it.
Yeah, it will. I guarantee you that.
What does your son think from that encounter you guys had down on that Ouachita River? What does he think now?
He doesn't really think that it was a Bigfoot because he don't believe in him. And he's half Hopi, and he's living with his mother out there in Mesa, Arizona. And he's not really into my native side. He was more into the Hopi side. So I don't know what the Hopis believe in, but I know what my tribe believes in.
But did he see that Bigfoot that day you were on the Ouachita?
Yeah, he's seen it, and he couldn't figure it out. And he just gave it to me. He gave me the binoculars and said, "Oh, what is it?" And I said, "It's a Bigfoot." And he said, "Well, looks like a tree to me." And I said, "Well, watch it when we walk. It'll walk." And he did, and it walked. And he said, "Oh, that's person." I said, "Look how tall he is up on that tree." And he said, "Oh, that's too far. You can't tell." So he didn't really believe me.
How old is he?
He's probably 29, almost 30 now. But at the time, he was probably 24. Back in, let's see, what year was that? That was probably 96, 97.
Wow. Well, that area in Anadarko, Gracemont, all that area, Sardis Lake, that's a really populated area with these Bigfoot. I don't know so much about the Dogman, but
yeah,
it makes to reason that where you have Bigfoot, you're
going to have Dogman.
Exactly. And where you see one, there might be others. Yeah.
Especially from Salyers Lake all the way down to the Anadarko.
Exactly. That's what we've been told as well. Like you said, that's a real thick area down there.
Yeah. It sure is. And there was a Bigfoot that was seen here in Anadarko in a subdivision, walking behind in the back fence, and they had Johnson grass that was about six feet tall, and this guy's shoulders was above the Johnson grass. And that girl was taking a shower, and she seen him, and she got out of the shower as fast as she could and dried off and put her clothes on, wet almost, ran out there and looked, and all she could see was him going down into the Ouachita River.
You know, that's a river you don't hear too much about when on these shows. I hear more of like the North or South Canadian or sometimes the Cimarron, but the Ouachita River is a big river system as well.
Yes.
And I would say it's just as thick. There's parts of those Oklahoma's river systems that are just woolly.
Yes.
Evan, do you have any
say that again? I didn't hear you.
Well, in kind of closing up here, do you have any parting words? Sounds like it's getting windy there. Do you have any parting words or any recommendation to tell people if they encounter these Bigfoot?
Well, all I got to say is just be careful and know your surroundings, and always be on the lookout. Don't let your children run too far away from you. Be on the lookout wherever you go, and especially if you're up against a tree line.
That's good advice. That's definitely good advice. I couldn't agree more.
Yep.
Well, I know I called you early here, Kevin, and I'm glad to finally make contact with you from last week. And I tell you, I'm very honored. Thank you for calling us and calling back. And I always enjoy talking to people from Oklahoma. Like I said, I'm very familiar with that Anadarko area. And the next time we come through, I'd like to look you up and stop and say hi.
All right. That's cool. All right. Sounds good. I waited a long time to call to whether or not to give this story or not.
Well,
but I finally did it.
I'm glad you did, because the more that we share, you feel better about it. You're sharing with people that are not judging you. You're sharing with people that have had experiences, and so we all know. We've all been called crazy ourselves or whatever. So you're among the same brothers and sisters that have seen, heard, and know.
I believe my brothers and sisters, my brothers especially. I have 9 brothers,
Wow.
and I know they've probably seen one, but they're not talking about it because they go out too and camp in the backcountry.
I'm sure they have, and a lot of people have seen and never say a word. There is literally, in my belief, there's literally thousands and thousands of sightings and encounters that we'll never hear because people are too afraid to talk about it. They're too afraid to be judged, they think, by others. They don't know what people think, but they don't know that these shows like this exist out there yet. And so I can't even imagine how many people in small rural communities across the United States have amazing encounters, scary encounters, friendly encounters, and they'll never share it. They just don't know any of these shows like this exist out there.
Well, I found you on the internet, so I guess it was the internet. No, it was on YouTube.
Yeah, it was on YouTube. We're getting ready to be on the internet with our website soon. Yes, keep in touch, and we appreciate you, Kevin, and God bless you, man, and have a safe journey.
Hey, man.
If I don't get to...
God bless you guys, and you guys be safe.